Today, I'm going to talk about RRR. What does it stand for? Ring, ring, ring. Who's that on the phone? It's Tollywood, kicking down your goddamn door with the best movie of 2022. At just over 3 hours, RRR earns its label as an action epic, and seriously, if anything, it's somehow not enough. This is a movie that feels like two movies stapled together, but they're both unreasonably awesome, and you really wish there was a third. It comes to us from Tollywood heavyweight S.S. Rajamouli, which... Actually, let's lay some groundwork here. If for any reason you've never heard the term Tollywood, it's just Indian films made in Telugu instead of Hindi. It's arguably a bigger market share these days than Bollywood, and Rajamouli is a big part of why, with not 2 or 3, but nearly a dozen increasingly profitable and acclaimed action spectacles under his belt. The conventions you probably expect from Indian big-budget action cinema are still here. The hyper-stylistic editing, inclusion of big musical numbers, the over-the-top sort of wuxia meets Looney Tunes action choreography, the less than convincing but always charmingly earnest VFX. But on the whole, RRR is not charmingly earnest. It's a crowning achievement and a statement win for an often underappreciated industry. Even by American standards, it's got a pretty strong budget, around $70 million, and not a cent was wasted, making sure it's as gorgeously shot, meticulously crafted, and also as downright fucking bananas as possible. So what is RRR about, you ask, mostly already sold on it, but polite enough to feed my channel the precious watch time? Well, it's about these two guys, Ramaraju and Bhim, who are fictionalized versions of famous Indian revolutionaries. They're also sort of mixed in with their namesake mythological heroes, Rama and Bhima, and what matters is neither the real men nor the mythological characters ever met each other. RRR wants to explore what might happen if they did. So the plot kicks off in the 1920s British Raj when Governor Scott Buxton and his terrible wife Catherine show up in this little village, and they are the hammiest, most mustache-twirlingly evil and racist imperialist archetypes I've ever seen. They're hysterical, and I adore their performances. They just straight up swindle this poor village woman into selling them her daughter, and when she asks them not to actually take her, they beat her ass and drive off to Delhi, never to return. Luckily, this village has a protector, Bhim, who heads off to rescue the girl and probably fuck up the governor just for good measure. Now, Buxton finds out about Bhim, so he and Catherine commission police officer Ramaraju, who is fresh off one of the single most creative and ridiculous one-man army action sequences I've ever seen, to find and apprehend Bhim alive. Simram wants a promotion to special officer, desperately, for reasons you do not need to know yet, and stopping Bhim is the only way he'll ever get it in the inherently unfair British administration. So there's your premise, right? A game of cat and mouse as Bhim attempts to find his way into the governor's palace, and Ram attempts to figure out who he is and catch him. Well, not exactly. Because not too long into their game, they actually do meet, saving a random child from a purely coincidental train crash, and they immediately become friends. This is where the story's engine really starts to rev, because the plot is not really about their friendship, but the story very much is. And it is beautiful. It really is. Their friendship is beautiful. It's so beautiful and special, it gets its own musical number, the first real one of the film even. It's a sweeping, melodramatic ballad about destiny and betrayal, played over this adorable montage of them bonding and having good times together. How long can this bromance really last? Who will discover the other's identity first? How will they react to discovering they're meant to be enemies? These questions will be answered in shocking and dramatic twists and turns, and even when you think it's all said and done, you'll check the time and realize you're only halfway through this leviathan of a narrative, because these two go through it, and in a way it's ridiculous that what feels most important is their relationship, but that is the unholy power of a compelling, loving male friendship. Just guys being dudes. It's truly the glue that holds this movie together. In fact, there's actually not a ton of dances or chases or fights in this 3-hour epic. It's mostly straight up talking scenes between strong and fleshed out characters, which is counter to the point I made about this movie being bananas, but trust me, there's more than enough banana in the scenes where it matters. The dynamics, and especially the more powerful, dramatic scenes, the majority of which are worth just leaving for you to see for yourself, really hold up the story in a way you don't expect at first. We start on such a strong note with the introductions that it's easy to forget you're watching about 2 full hours of Ram and Beam just strolling through a buddy comedy, an emotional drama, or at most a political thriller. It makes it hit that much harder whenever they suddenly explode through the wall like the Kool-Aid Man into a wacky, violent superhero power fantasy. A lot of this successful undercurrent is built on the performances from stars Ram Charan and Rama Rao Jr., who are just acting their balls off for 3 straight hours. The physical demands of these insane action sequences and dance numbers aside, RRR is a movie that bounces around wildly in tone and requires impressive range to keep an audience invested in the lives of its protagonists. For reasons I truly don't understand, Netflix only offers the Hindi dub for the movie, so you can't hear the original Telugu dialogue. But even watching their faces and their physical performances, you can feel the energy these two are putting into this. And it's not only never hard to buy into the emotions they want from you, it's actively infectious. The chemistry Ram and Beam have is thoroughly charming when it needs to be, but it's tinged with a foreboding rivalry. It makes you nervous for the other shoe to drop, for the breakup, if you will. I mean, they don't play around. It is fire and water. It's forces of nature. 2 superheroes finding themselves at odds, forced to decide between their cherished, beautiful friendship and their personal goals. And that's just the midway point. There's still so much. Like, I skipped another entire dance number. The subplot where Beam has a crush on the one not racist British lady. I should probably talk about the flashback they keep showing more of that's really important, but kind of disrupts the pacing if I'm being honest. The whole soundtrack basically deserves its own video. And also, there's this one part where Beam uses a fucking motorcycle as a handheld weapon. If the story of RRR is about friendship and togetherness, what, you may wonder, eager to know what more this masterpiece could have to offer, is the plot about? Well, not to bury the lead, it is in fact about revolution. Now, big disclaimer here, I'm not gonna go into the nuances of fictionalized retellings of real revolutions with modern political implications as an artist or consuming audience. That's above my pay grade. This is a gonzo action epic based solely on the existence of real people, and any comically evil depictions of colonialists, glorification of violence or nationalism, or classist and/or homoerotic readings of the dynamic between the leads are likely purely coincidental and certainly not out in the world for me to parse. I'm just here to gush about the gonzo action part. To reiterate, the vibrant and often wacky stylization of RRR is nothing too conceptually new in the Indian film industry, but RRR has gone further beyond in pretty much every way available. I did say there's probably about 2 hours or more of dialogue and drama, but that still leaves a full hour of these 2 hunks just getting down and/or beating ass. That's a lot of ass, and most of it is British. These guys are just caricatures. They're 1980s pro wrestling heels, the most unambiguous hate boner material you will ever see. And it's such a surreal combination of electric and hilarious to watch the heroes kill the shit out of them in increasingly absurd ways. All of the action, in fact, of which there are several kinds, is shot and edited with such vigorously metaphorical emphasis, it wraps around being ham-fisted and comes back to being great storytelling. These men are superheroes, and in this story where their symbolic contributions to the Indian independence movement are represented by sheer physical prowess, it only makes sense that its presentation be somewhat literally larger than life. These action scenes, which, if I haven't made it clear enough, are magnificent, are not complete without music, and the music I could talk about for hours. This is a thunderous, explosive, run through the goddamn wall kind of soundtrack. When it's not busy with passionate ballads and anthems, it's just putting holes in the drums and tying leaf blowers to the horns. The choral sections are right out of a classical epic. It's banger after banger, and it's built around the scene not to maintain the tone, but to purposely oversaturate it. It's like a chainsaw bayonet. It's definitely noticeable, but only in a way that makes it more fucking rad. It's so perfectly timed with the edit, it's so visceral, it creates this sort of punk rock energy permeating the entire movie. This isn't so much a compelling or inspiring vision of a nation coming together to fight oppression, as it is an unambiguous mythologizing of historical figures in triumphant spectacle. The result of marrying so much gonzo stylization with such sweeping emotional stakes, and of course doing both with what is probably the biggest collection of raw talent Tollywood has to offer, is a blistering 3 hours where every moment feels as iconic as the last. Okay, maybe not every moment. There are some weird pacing choices. This probably could have been 2 2-hour movies, or 1 2.5-hour movie with some restraint employed with the flashbacks and subplots. But I promise you, that is the only negative thing I can even think of. As I write this, it's definitely still too early to tell, but there is legitimate conversation about Rajamouli as an Oscar contender for Best Director, a feat that has yet to be accomplished by an Indian director. The cultural impact of RRR is already off the usual charts. Invest in these stonks if you haven't already. You will be the cool movie guy in your friend group. I can't express in such a short amount of time the potential importance of this movie. There was a time the average American viewer simply could not be asked to sit down and try out an Indian blockbuster action film. Too weird, I don't like subtitles, CG bad, why are there music videos in the middle of this? RRR is actively breaking through that previously established ceiling on a flaming chariot pulled by mystical golden elephants, painted with ornate depictions of Shiva himself, crushing the throats of faceless British goons. I implore you to watch this movie. I'm almost begging you. Be on the side of progress. Uplift international cinema. I'm so serious about this. I'm not even ending with a joke. Just go watch this movie.